I'm not boring. I just became a millionaire, quietly.
I should have known something was wrong when Mara spent 3 hours getting ready for her company's annual gala. She'd been to dozens of these events, but tonight felt different. She kept checking her phone, applying lipstick with surgical precision, and asking me the same question over and over. Do I look perfect, David? Perfect. That word had become her obsession lately. You always look perfect, I told her, adjusting my tie in our bedroom mirror. At 44, I'd learned that marriage was about saying the right things at the right times, even when your gut was screaming warnings. Mara Kingsley, my wife of 12 years, stood before our walk-in closet in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She worked as marketing director for Luxe Fashion House, one of Chicago's premier fashion companies. Her boss, Victor Kavanaugh, was old money incarnate, the kind of man who wore $1,000 suits like armor and treated everyone beneath his tax bracket like furniture. Victor says tonight's announcement will change everything, Mara said, sliding on diamond earrings I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. The whole industry will be watching. I grabbed the small wrapped box from my nightstand, a first edition of her favorite novel I'd tracked down through 3 different rare book dealers. Speaking of announcements, I have something special for you too. She glanced at the box with mild interest before returning to her reflection. That's sweet, honey. Maybe save it for later? Tonight needs to be perfect. There was that word again. The Peninsula Hotel's grand ballroom buzzed with Chicago's fashion elite when we arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over women in designer gowns and men in tuxedos that cost more than my first car. I recognized faces from magazine covers and gossip columns, people who treated fashion like religion and money like oxygen. Victor Kavanaugh held court near the main stage, surrounded by his usual circle of admirers. At 50, he was still handsome in that entitled silver-haired way that came from never hearing the word no. His family owned half of Chicago's Gold Coast, and he never let anyone forget it. David. Carla Martinez, Mara's assistant, appeared beside us with a champagne flute in each hand. Don't you look handsome tonight? Very suburban. I'd learned to decode Carla's backhanded compliments over the years. Suburban meant boring. Handsome meant acceptable for Mara's arm candy. Carla had been Mara's closest friend since college, the kind of person who smiled while sliding knives between ribs. Carla, I nodded. Love what you've done with your hair. Very ambitious. Her smile faltered slightly. Point to me. Mara had already drifted toward Victor's circle, leaving me standing with Carla and the champagne I didn't want. This was how these events always went. Mara networking with industry royalty while I played the role of supportive husband, smiling and nodding at conversations about trends I'd never understand. Ladies and gentlemen, Victor's voice boomed through the sound system. If I could have your attention, please. The crowd turned toward the stage where Victor stood behind a podium, looking like he owned the world, which, according to his net worth, wasn't far from the truth. Tonight marks a special moment for Luxe Fashion House, he continued. But more importantly, it marks a special moment for me personally. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something in his tone, the way his eyes found Mara in the crowd, made my stomach clench. Over the past year, I've had the privilege of working closely with our marketing director, Mara Kingsley. Her talent, her vision, her absolute perfection in everything she touches has transformed not just our company, but my life. The crowd murmured appreciatively. I watched Mara's face flush with pleasure at the public praise. She lived for moments like this, being recognized, being celebrated, being perfect. Victor stepped down from the podium and walked directly to where Mara stood. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, everyone sensing something momentous about to happen. Phones appeared in hands, cameras aimed at the unfolding scene. Mara, Victor said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent ballroom. You've shown me what real partnership looks like, what real love looks like. A chill swept through my entire body. Victor dropped to one knee right there in front of 300 people, pulling out a ring box that caught the chandelier light like captured fire. The diamond inside had to be at least 5 carats, more money than I'd made in my first 2 years out of college. Will you divorce your boring, inadequate husband and marry me instead? Victor asked, his voice dripping with confidence. Will you finally choose the life you deserve? The ballroom erupted in gasps and excited whispers. Phones recorded from every angle. And Mara, my wife, the woman who'd promised to love me in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, looked down at Victor with tears of joy streaming down her face. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yes, Victor. I'll marry you. The crowd exploded in applause as Victor slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her passionately. Champagne corks popped, people cheered, and I stood there like a statue, watching my marriage end in front of half of Chicago's social elite. Carla appeared beside me, her face flushed with excitement. Oh my God, David, isn't this amazing? Mara's finally getting everything she's always deserved. I turned to look at her, this woman who'd been in my home countless times, who'd eaten at my table and pretended to be my friend. Everything she deserved? Well, Carla shrugged, not even having the decency to look embarrassed. Victor can give her the life she was meant for. The penthouse, the private jets, the social status. You're a nice guy, David, but let's be honest, you were never in her league. Around us, people were already pulling out phones to post about the romantic proposal they just witnessed. I caught fragments of conversation. About time she upgraded? That husband of hers always looked so out of place. Victor's been crazy about her for months. Months. They'd been planning this for months. I looked back at Mara, still glowing in Victor's arms as photographers snapped pictures. She caught my eye across the room and had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable for about 2 seconds before Victor whispered something in her ear that made her laugh. The gift box felt heavy in my jacket pocket, a first edition book for a woman who'd just thrown away 12 years like yesterday's newspaper. I walked toward the exit, my footsteps echoing strangely in my ears despite the celebration continuing around me. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody even seemed to notice I was leaving. I was just the discarded husband, the subplot in someone else's fairy tale. Outside the peninsula, Chicago's October air bit through my tuxedo. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called my lawyer. Alan, it's David Kingsley. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. My wife just publicly announced she's leaving me for her boss, and I want to know exactly what my options are. Then I did something else I'd never thought I'd do. I opened my banking app and started making transfers. If Mara wanted to play games with my life in front of 300 witnesses, she was about to learn that I wasn't as boring as everyone thought. By the time I got home, my phone had 17 missed calls. The pounding on my front door started at 11:47 p.m. I know because I was sitting in my home office, systematically moving assets and closing joint accounts while nursing a glass of 20-year-old scotch. The good stuff I'd been saving for our anniversary next month. David, open this door right now. Mara's voice carried the edge of panic I'd only heard once before, when she'd accidentally deleted a presentation the night before a major client meeting. I took another sip of scotch and continued typing. The beauty of being the primary account holder on everything was that I could lock her out with a few keystrokes. 12 years of being the responsible one with finances was finally paying dividends. I know you're in there. Your car's in the driveway. More pounding. I wondered if the neighbors were watching the show. Probably. The Hendersons next door had always been curious about our marriage, especially after Mara's increasingly frequent work trips with Victor. I finished transferring the last of our joint savings into my personal account. $47,000 that would have been half hers in a divorce, but now belonged entirely to me thanks to her very public declaration that our marriage was over. The pounding stopped. Then I heard the sound I'd been waiting for, her key in the lock, followed by the frustrated beep of the security system rejecting her code. I changed it an hour ago. David. Now she was really panicking. The door won't open. Something's wrong with the system. I walked to the front door and spoke through the wood. The system's working fine, Mara. You just don't live here anymore. What are you talking about? Of course I live here. This is my house. Actually, it's my house. My name's on the deed. My credit score got us the mortgage. My income made the payments. I leaned against the door, enjoying this conversation more than I should have. But don't worry, I'm sure Victor's penthouse has plenty of room for you. Silence. Then in a smaller voice, David, please, let me in. We need to talk. About what? You seemed pretty clear at the peninsula. You want a divorce so you can marry Victor. Message received. It's complicated. I unlocked the door and opened it. Mara stood on my doorstep looking like a beautiful disaster. Her perfect makeup smeared, her red dress wrinkled, her 5-carat engagement ring catching the porch light. Behind her, Victor's black Mercedes idled in my driveway with him behind the wheel, watching. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Let's have that talk. She rushed past me into the living room, immediately heading for the bar cart in the corner. Her hands shook as she poured herself 3 fingers of gin. No tonic, no ice. Stress drinking. I'd seen it before during her bad days at work. David, I know how this looks. It looks like you publicly humiliated me in front of 300 people after carrying on an affair with your boss. I sat down in my favorite armchair, the one she'd always hated because it didn't match her aesthetic vision for our home. How does it actually look? She drank half the gin in one swallow. It's not an affair. We haven't, Mara. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. While you were celebrating your engagement, I was reviewing our finances. Want to know what I found? Her face went pale. Charges at the Ritz-Carlton. Always the same dates as your overnight strategy sessions with Victor. Room service for 2. Spa treatments? Champagne? I scrolled through the statements. Either you've developed multiple personality disorder or you've been sleeping with your boss on my credit card for 6 months. David, please. Then there's the jewelry. A tennis bracelet from Tiffany in August. Earrings from Cartier in September. All charged to our joint account. All gifts you told me were from grateful clients. I looked up at her. Were you grateful, Mara? She finished the gin and poured another. You don't understand. Victor and I have a connection. We understand each other in ways that you and I never could. What ways are those? Ambition, drive, the desire to be more than ordinary. She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. You've always been content with mediocrity, David. Your little consulting business, this suburban house, your simple dreams, I need more than that. My little consulting business? I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. Mara, do you have any idea what my little consulting business is worth? She waved dismissively. I don't know, a few $100,000? Maybe $500,000 if you're lucky. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. Kingsley Tech Solutions had gross revenues of $47 million last year. Net profit of $18 million. My personal net worth, as of tonight, is approximately $12 million. The gin glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. That's impossible. You work from home. You wear jeans to meetings. You drive a Honda. I wear jeans because I'm comfortable. I drive a Honda because it's reliable. And I work from home because I own the company. I closed the laptop. Did you really think I was some small-time consultant this whole time? But you never acted like what? Like Victor? Throwing money around to impress people, buying respect instead of earning it. I shook my head. I didn't marry you for your financial acumen, Mara, but I thought you at least knew what your husband did for a living. She sank onto the couch, staring at the broken glass at her feet. $12 million? Was past tense. As of tonight, you have no claim to any of it. You made your choice very publicly. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still affects asset division, especially when it's recorded by 300 witnesses. The color drained from her face. David, wait. Maybe we can work this out. Maybe we can go to counseling. Try to what? Pretend you didn't just accept another man's proposal in front of half of Chicago? I stood up. Pretend you haven't been lying to me for months? Pretend you didn't just tell me I'm mediocre and ordinary? I was emotional. I said things I didn't mean. No, Mara. For the first time in months, you said exactly what you meant. I walked to the front door and opened it. Victor's waiting for you. Go live your extraordinary life. She stood up unsteadily. What about my things? I'll have them packed and delivered to Victor's penthouse tomorrow. My car is registered in my name and financed through my credit. I'll have it picked up from Victor's building. My credit cards? Canceled 20 minutes ago. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. You can't just cut me off completely. I have rights. You have the right to whatever Victor wants to give you. You chose him. Live with that choice. She walked toward the door, then stopped. The David I married would never be this cruel. The Mara I married would never sleep with her boss and propose to him in public. I held the door open wider. People change. She walked out into the night, her heels clicking on the concrete walkway. I watched Victor get out of his Mercedes to help her into the passenger seat. Such a gentleman. He looked back at me with a smug smile like he'd just won some kind of contest. I smiled back and gave him a little wave. Then I went inside, poured myself another scotch, and started planning phase 2. Because if Victor Kavanaugh thought he'd won something tonight, he was about to learn just how wrong a rich man could be. My lawyer, Alan Reeves, had the kind of office that screamed, expensive but worth it. Mahogany everything, leather-bound law books, and a view of Lake Michigan that probably added $50 to his hourly rate. We'd known each other since college, back when he was just another broke kid trying to figure out his future. Jesus Christ, David. Alan leaned back in his chair, reading through the financial documents I'd brought. 12 million? When did you become secretly rich? It wasn't a secret. I just didn't advertise it. I sipped coffee from a mug that probably cost more than most people's dinner. Mara never asked about the details, and I never volunteered them. And she really thought you were just some small-time consultant? Apparently, she saw me working from home in jeans and assumed I was barely scraping by. I shook my head. 12 years of marriage, and she never once asked to see a tax return or a bank statement. Alan whistled low. Well, her loss is definitely your gain. With the public nature of her infidelity announcement, we can protect most of your assets. The prenup you signed is ironclad. She gets the jewelry you bought her and half of any assets acquired during the marriage, but your business predates the wedding. What about the house? Yours, your name, your down payment, your mortgage payments. He flipped through more papers. She's going to walk away with maybe $200,000 and whatever Victor wants to give her. Good, I meant it. After last night's revelation about my supposed mediocrity, I felt remarkably unsentimental about Mara's financial future. There's something else, Alan said, his tone shifting. I did some research on Victor Kavanaugh after you called. The man's not as solid as he appears. What do you mean? Lux Fashion House is hemorrhaging money. They've been propped up by his family trust for 2 years, but even old money has limits. Industry rumors suggest they're looking for a buyer or considering bankruptcy. I felt a smile tugging at my lips. How interesting. David, I know that look. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Victor Kavanaugh is about to learn that stealing another man's wife comes with consequences. Alan held up a hand. Whatever you're planning, keep it legal. I don't do criminal defense. Relax. Everything I have in mind is perfectly legal. Morally questionable, maybe, but legal. I left Alan's office with a spring in my step and a plan forming in my mind. The first stop was lunch with my best friend, Nate Morrison. We'd known each other since high school, back when he was the star quarterback, and I was the smart kid who helped him pass calculus. Now he owned a chain of gyms across the Chicago suburbs and had the kind of direct, no BS personality that made him perfect for what I had in mind. She really said you were mediocre? Nate asked around a bite of his burger. We were sitting in a sports bar near his flagship gym, surrounded by the lunch crowd of office workers and construction guys. Her exact words were that I was content with mediocrity. I picked at my salad, still not having much appetite. Apparently, my simple dreams and suburban lifestyle weren't enough for her sophisticated tastes. $12 million in simple dreams, Nate snorted. What a complete idiot. Language, Nathan. We're in public. Sorry, Mom. He grinned at me. So, what's the plan? And don't tell me you're just going to take this lying down. I've seen you play poker. You don't fold when you have a good hand. I need information. Specifically, I need to know everything about Victor Kavanaugh's business dealings, his personal life, and his relationship with Mara. Sounds like you need a private investigator. I need someone who won't ask too many questions about why I want the information. Nate pulled out his phone. I know a guy, ex-cop, lost his job for being too honest. Does freelance security work now, but he's good at finding things people want to keep hidden? Set up a meeting. Done. Nate finished his burger and leaned back. What else? I want you to keep an eye on Victor. Follow him, see where he goes, who he talks to, but be subtle about it. Define subtle. Don't break any laws. Don't threaten anyone. Just observe. I can do observe. Nate's grin turned predatory. This is going to be fun. The private investigator, Jake Torres, met us at Nate's gym that evening. He was a compact man in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of alert eyes that missed nothing. We sat in Nate's office while the sounds of clanking weights and grunting gym members filtered through the walls. Divorce case? Jake asked, pulling out a notebook. More than that, I said. I want to know everything about Victor Kavanaugh, his business, his finances, his personal relationships, his habits, everything. Legal everything, I assume. Completely legal, public records, social media, observation from public spaces. Nothing that would require breaking and entering or hacking. Jake nodded. Standard rate is $500 a day plus expenses. How deep do you want me to dig? As deep as you can go without breaking the law. And the woman? Mara Kingsley. Soon to be Mara Kavanaugh, I suppose. Same deal, everything legal and public. This is going to take some time. I have time. I pulled out my checkbook. And I have money. Find me something useful, Jake. 3 days later, Jake called with his first report. We met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, far from anywhere Victor or Mara might accidentally encounter us. Your instincts were right, Jake said, sliding a manila folder across the table. Victor Kavanaugh is in serious financial trouble. I opened the folder and found copies of public filings, newspaper articles, and what looked like surveillance photos. How serious? Lux Fashion House owes $3.7 million to various creditors. They've missed 2 loan payments in the past 6 months. The family trust that's been keeping them afloat is controlled by his mother, and according to Society Page gossip, she's not happy with his spending habits. What about personally? Leveraged to the hilt. The penthouse is mortgaged, the cars are leased, and he owes money to some very expensive lawyers. Jake pointed to one of the documents. He's been liquidating assets quietly for months. Art collection, vintage wine, even some of his mother's jewelry. Interesting. What about Mara? She's been apartment hunting in some very expensive neighborhoods. Apparently, she thinks marrying Victor is going to upgrade her lifestyle significantly. I studied the surveillance photos. Victor entering what looked like a pawn shop, Mara touring a penthouse apartment that probably cost more per month than most people's annual salary. There's something else, Jake said. I followed Victor yesterday. He had lunch with a bankruptcy attorney. Bankruptcy? The kind that specializes in helping rich people hide assets before they file. Very discreet, very expensive, very illegal if done wrong. I closed the folder and smiled. Jake, you've just made my week. What are you planning? I'm planning to give Victor exactly what he deserves. I stood up and shook his hand. Keep digging. I have a feeling we're just getting started. That night, I sat in my home office with Jake's report spread across my desk, planning my next move. Victor thought he'd won by stealing my wife and humiliating me in public. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the boring, mediocre suburban husband. Time to show him just how expensive that mistake was going to be. The text message from Carla arrived while I was reviewing Jake's latest surveillance photos. David, we need to talk. Coffee tomorrow? I feel terrible about everything. I stared at the message for a long moment. Carla Martinez had been Mara's closest friend since college, her maid of honor at our wedding, and a regular fixture at our dinner parties for over a decade. She'd also been the first person to congratulate Mara on her upgrade from me to Victor. I typed back, sure, Lincoln Park Cafe, 2 p.m. The next afternoon, I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. Carla walked in 15 minutes late, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Her usual designer outfit had been replaced with jeans and a sweater, and she kept glancing around like she expected paparazzi. David, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for meeting me. Of course. We've known each other for 12 years. She winced at the emphasis on known. That's what I wanted to talk about. I feel horrible about the other night. The things I said, I was caught up in the moment. You mean when you told me Mara was finally getting everything she deserved because I was never in her league? God, did I really say that? She covered her face with her hands. I was drunk and excited and I said stupid things. I'm sorry. I sipped my coffee and studied her. What do you want, Carla? I want to make things right between us. You're a good man, and you didn't deserve to be humiliated like that. Interesting. What changed your mind? She shifted uncomfortably. Can I be honest with you? Please do. Honesty has been in short supply lately. Mara's been different since the engagement. Demanding. She expects everyone to drop everything for her wedding planning. She's talking about moving to New York, about how Chicago isn't sophisticated enough for her new lifestyle. And she fired me yesterday. There it was. I leaned back in my chair. Fired you? She said I was too provincial for her new image, that she needed an assistant who understood high society. Carla's voice cracked slightly. 12 years of friendship, and she threw me away like garbage. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. That must hurt. It does, but it also opened my eyes. The Mara I've been defending isn't the person I thought she was. Carla leaned forward. David, there are things you should know. Things about her and Victor. Such as... The affair started 8 months ago, not 6. I helped cover for her, made excuses when you called during their meetings. She looked ashamed. I thought I was being a good friend. What else? She's been stealing from the company, Small amounts, but consistent. Charging personal expenses to corporate accounts, inflating vendor invoices, and keeping the difference. Victor knows about it. He's been helping her. I felt a surge of interest. Do you have proof? I kept copies of everything, receipts, emails, bank records. I thought I was protecting her, but now she pulled out a flash drive. It's all here. I pocketed the drive. Why are you giving this to me? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because... She hesitated. Because I think Victor is using her. He's in financial trouble, David. Serious trouble. And Mara has no idea. What kind of trouble? The company's going under. We haven't been paid in 6 weeks. Victor keeps promising that new investment is coming, but the creditors are circling. I think he's planning to marry Mara and then disappear with whatever money he can grab. This was better than I'd hoped. Carla, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to reconnect with Mara. Apologize for whatever imaginary slight caused her to fire you. Tell her you realize she was right, that you want to support her new life. Why would I do that? Because I'm going to destroy Victor Kavanaugh, and when I do, Mara's going to need a friend. I leaned forward. A real friend. Someone who actually cares about her welfare. Carla stared at me. You still love her? I love the woman I married. The woman who accepted Victor's proposal isn't her. I finished my coffee. But maybe when this is over, I can help her find her way back. And if she can't, then at least I'll have tried. That evening, I met with Nate and Jake at the gym. The three of us had fallen into an easy routine. Nate providing muscle and local knowledge, Jake handling investigation and surveillance, me coordinating and financing everything. Carla came through, I said, handing Jake the flash drive. Financial records showing embezzlement by both Mara and Victor. Jake whistled. How much are we talking about? She didn't say, but it's been going on for months. Small amounts, but consistent. Death by 1,000 cuts, Nate said. Smart way to steal if you don't get greedy. What's our next move? Jake asked. We need more. I want Victor's personal financial records, his business dealings, everything. I looked at both men. And I want to know about his other women. Other women? Nate raised an eyebrow. Men like Victor don't suddenly become faithful when they get engaged. If he's been cheating on his fiancée with my wife, he's probably cheating on my wife with someone else. Jake grinned. Now you're thinking like a real investigator. How long do you need? Give me a week. Maybe 2 if he's careful. Take the time you need. I want this to be thorough. The next morning, I got a call from Alan. David, we need to talk. Mara's hired a lawyer. Expected? Who? Richard Blackwood. He's expensive and ruthless, but he's not stupid. He knows she doesn't have much of a case. What's he demanding? Spousal support? Half of all marital assets and the house? I laughed. Based on what? He's claiming you hid assets during the marriage and that Mara contributed to your business success through emotional support and networking. Emotional support? She didn't even know what my business was worth. I know. It's a fishing expedition. He's hoping you'll settle to avoid a messy public divorce. Counteroffer? She gets exactly what the prenup specifies and not a penny more. And Alan? Yeah? Make sure the counteroffer is delivered to Victor's penthouse. I want him to see exactly how much his new fiancée is going to cost him. 2 days later, Carla called. I did what you asked. Mara and I are friends again. How did that go? She apologized for firing me, said she was stressed about the wedding. She wants me to be her maid of honor. Perfect. What did you learn? She's scared, David, really scared. Victor's been distant lately, taking mysterious phone calls and disappearing for hours. She thinks he might be having second thoughts about the marriage. Anything else? She asked about you, how you were handling the divorce, whether you seemed angry or vindictive. What did you tell her? That you seemed sad but resigned, that you weren't fighting the divorce. Good. Let her think I'm the same boring, predictable man she married. David, what if she wants to reconcile? What if she realizes she made a mistake? I was quiet for a long moment. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But first, Victor Kavanaugh is going to pay for what he did. Be careful. Powerful men don't like being cornered. Neither do boring suburban husbands, I said. Victor's about to learn that lesson the hard way. Jake's second report was a masterpiece of investigative work. We met at a different coffee shop this time. I was being paranoid about surveillance, but paranoia had served me well so far. Victor Kavanaugh is a walking disaster. Jake said, sliding a thick folder across the table. Financially, personally, professionally, the man's life is held together with duct tape and borrowed money. I opened the folder to find bank statements, photographs, and what looked like medical records. How did you get all this? Public records, mostly. Some social media deep diving, a few conversations with disgruntled employees. Jake grinned. Amazing what people will tell you when they think their boss is screwing them over. What did you find? Lux Fashion House is 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. Victor's been juggling creditors for months, but the music's about to stop. His mother cut off the family trust last week after she found out about the embezzlement. His mother knows? Eleanor Kavanaugh is 83 years old and sharp as a razor. She built half the family fortune herself, and she doesn't tolerate thieves, even her own son. Jake pointed to a newspaper clipping. She released a statement to the Chicago Tribune yesterday. Quote, Victor Kavanaugh no longer represents the interests of the Kavanaugh family trust. I studied the clipping. Eleanor Kavanaugh looked like the kind of woman who could freeze you with a single glance. What about the other women? Bingo. Jake pulled out a series of photographs. Meet Amanda Chen, 26, aspiring model and Victor's side piece for the past 3 months. The photos showed Victor entering and leaving a downtown apartment building, always with the same young Asian woman. She was beautiful in that artificial way that came from expensive procedures and professional makeup. How serious is it? Serious enough that he's been paying her rent and buying her jewelry. Same jewelry store where he bought Mara's engagement ring, actually. Poetic justice. There's more. Amanda doesn't know about Mara, and Mara doesn't know about Amanda. Victor's been telling each of them that she's the only woman in his life. I felt a familiar surge of anger. He's playing them both. Like a fiddle. But here's the interesting part. Amanda's pregnant. I looked up sharply. Pregnant? 6 weeks along. I have copies of her medical records from a clinic Victor's been paying for. She hasn't told him yet, but she's been shopping for baby clothes and looking at larger apartments. Jesus Christ. It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. Jake pulled out another document. Victor's been in contact with a bankruptcy attorney, like I mentioned before, but he's also been talking to someone else, a fixer who specializes in helping wealthy men disappear when their lives implode. Disappear how? New identity, offshore accounts, one-way tickets to countries without extradition treaties. Very expensive, very illegal, very effective. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. He's planning to run. That's my read. Marry your wife, clean out whatever assets he can access, and vanish before the creditors or the FBI catch up with him. What about Mara? What about her? She's useful to him right now because she has access to your money, or thinks she does. Once he realizes she's not bringing anything to the marriage, she becomes a liability. I felt a cold fury building in my chest. Whatever Mara had done to me, she didn't deserve to be used and abandoned by a man like Victor. How long do we have? Based on the timeline I've pieced together, maybe 2 weeks before he makes his move. Then we need to move first. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with Nate, Jake, and Alan. We gathered at my house, neutral territory where we could speak freely. Gentlemen, I said, pouring drinks for everyone, it's time to take Victor Kavanaugh down. What's the plan? Alan asked. We're going to destroy him systematically. His business, his reputation, his relationships, his escape plans, everything. How? I pulled out Jake's reports and spread them across the coffee table. First, we expose the embezzlement. I'm going to send copies of Carla's evidence to the FBI, the IRS, and the Illinois Attorney General's office. That'll trigger investigations, Alan warned. Could take months to resolve. I'm not looking for quick resolution. I'm looking to tie Victor up in legal problems he can't run from. What else? Nate asked. Second, we expose the affairs, both of them. I'm going to make sure Mara knows about Amanda, and Amanda knows about Mara. That's going to hurt Mara, Jake pointed out. Better she gets hurt now than after Victor disappears with her money. I looked at each man. I won't let her be victimized by him, no matter what she's done to me. Third, we destroy his escape plan. Jake, I need you to identify this fixer Victor's been talking to. I want to know everything about their arrangement. And then we make sure the FBI knows about it too. Conspiracy to flee prosecution is a federal crime. Alan whistled low. You're not just destroying him, you're making sure he goes to prison. Victor Kavanaugh stole my wife, humiliated me in public, and now he's planning to steal her money and abandon her. He's also embezzled from his own company and is planning to flee the country to avoid prosecution. I finished my drink. Yes, I want him to go to prison. What about Mara? Nate asked. That depends on her. If she's genuinely been manipulated by Victor, if she wants to make amends, then we'll work something out. If she's been a willing participant in his schemes, I shrugged. Then she can face the consequences too. David, Alan said carefully, you need to be prepared for the possibility that Mara won't want to reconcile, that she'll choose Victor even after everything comes out. I know, but I have to try to save her from him. I owe the woman I married that much. And if she can't be saved? I looked around the room at these three men who'd become my allies, my war council, my friends. Then at least I'll know I tried, and Victor Kavanaugh will still be destroyed. When do we start? Jake asked. Tomorrow. I want everything in motion by the end of the week. What's the endgame? Nate asked. I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The endgame is that Victor Kavanaugh learns what happens when you underestimate a boring suburban husband. He wanted to play games with my life? Fine. Let's see how he likes playing by my rules. The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning. I was in my home office monitoring news feeds and social media when Carla called. David, something's happening. FBI agents just showed up at Lux Fashion House with boxes and computers. They're seizing everything. How's Mara handling it? She's panicking. Victor told everyone it's just a routine audit, but nobody believes him. Half the staff has already started looking for new jobs. What about Victor himself? Cool as ice, at least on the surface, but I saw him making phone calls in his office and he looked scared. Perfect. The embezzlement evidence had done its job. Keep me posted on developments. The second domino fell that afternoon. Jake called with an update on the Amanda situation. I made contact with Amanda Chen, told her I was a private investigator working for a concerned party who had information about Victor Kavanaugh. How did she take it? Initially defensive, but when I showed her the photos of Victor with Mara, along with copies of the engagement announcement from the society pages, she got very quiet. And she wants to meet. Tonight, 7 p.m. at that coffee shop in Lincoln Park we used before. I'll be there. Amanda Chen was even more beautiful in person than in Jake's surveillance photos, but there was a hardness around her eyes that spoke of difficult experiences. She sat across from me in the coffee shop, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. So you're the husband, she said without preamble. I am, and you're the other woman. I didn't know I was the other woman. Victor told me he was single, that he'd never found anyone worth marrying. She laughed bitterly. I guess I should have known better. How long have you been together? 4 months. He swept me off my feet. Expensive dinners, jewelry, promises about our future together. She touched her stomach unconsciously. I thought he loved me. Amanda, there's something else you need to know. What? Victor's planning to disappear, new identity, offshore accounts, probably within the next week or two. Her face went pale. That's impossible. We have plans. He's been talking about buying a house, about starting a family. He's been telling you what you wanted to hear, just like he told my wife what she wanted to hear. She was quiet for a long moment. The baby, she said finally. You haven't told him? I was waiting for the right moment. I thought. She trailed off. God, I'm such an idiot. No, you're not. You're a victim, just like Mara, just like everyone else Victor has used over the years. What do you want from me? I want you to help me stop him before he hurts anyone else. How? I pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. This is a federal prosecutor who specializes in financial crimes. She's expecting your call. Tell her everything. The money Victor's been spending on you, the promises he made, the timeline of your relationship. Will I get in trouble? You haven't done anything wrong. You're a witness, not a criminal. She picked up the card and stared at it. What about the baby? That's up to you. But you should know that Victor's broke. Whatever money he's been spending on you, it's either stolen or borrowed. When this all comes out, there won't be anything left. And your wife, Mara, she's about to learn the same hard truths you are. Amanda nodded slowly. I'll make the call. The third domino fell the next morning. Carla texted me. Mara knows about Amanda, Victor's penthouse. Come now if you want to see the fireworks. I drove to Victor's building in record time, taking the elevator to the penthouse floor. I could hear shouting through the door, Mara's voice, high and angry, mixed with Victor's deeper tones and a third voice I didn't recognize. I knocked on the door. The shouting stopped. Victor opened the door, looking haggard. Behind him, I could see Mara standing in the living room, her hair disheveled and her makeup smeared. And sitting on the couch, looking small and scared, was Amanda Chen. "David," Victor said, his usual confidence cracking, "this isn't a good time. Actually, I think it's a perfect time." I pushed past him into the penthouse. "Ladies, I thought you might want to meet each other properly." "You son of a witch!" Mara spat. "You set this up." "I didn't set anything up. I just made sure the truth came out." I looked at Amanda. "Did you make that phone call?" She nodded. "This morning. The prosecutor wants to meet with me tomorrow." "What phone call?" Victor demanded. "The one where Amanda tells the FBI about all the money you've been spending on her? Money you embezzled from your own company?" Victor's face went white. "Amanda, you didn't—" "She did. Just like I sent them the evidence of your embezzlement scheme with Mara. Just like I gave them information about your plans to flee the country." "You bastard," Victor snarled, lunging toward me. I sidestepped easily. 12 years of marriage to Mara had taught me to avoid flying objects. Victor stumbled and nearly fell, catching himself on the back of the couch. "Careful, Victor. Assault charges would just add to your legal problems." "What legal problems?" Mara asked, her voice small. "Oh, you don't know." I looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Victor's company is bankrupt. He's been embezzling money for months, including the money he spent on your engagement ring. The FBI raided his offices yesterday, and he's about to be arrested for financial fraud and conspiracy to flee prosecution." "That's not—" "Victor, tell him that's not true." Victor slumped onto the couch next to Amanda, his head in his hands. "It's true, all of it." The silence that followed was deafening. "So what now?" Amanda asked finally. "Now Victor goes to prison. The company goes into bankruptcy, and you two get to pick up the pieces of your lives." I looked at Mara. "Assuming you want to." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you have a choice to make, Mara. You can stick with Victor and go down with his ship, or you can walk away and try to salvage something from this mess. And if I walk away, then we talk about our marriage, about what went wrong, about whether there's anything left worth saving. You'd take me back after everything?" "I'd be willing to try, if you're willing to be honest about what happened and why." She looked at Victor, who was still slumped on the couch, then at Amanda, who was crying quietly. "I don't know what I want anymore." "That's okay. You don't have to decide right now." I headed for the door. "But decide soon, because in about an hour, the FBI is going to be here with arrest warrants." "How do you know that?" I smiled. "Because I called them and told them where to find Victor." I left the three of them in the penthouse and took the elevator down to the lobby. As I walked out of the building, I saw FBI vehicles pulling up to the curb. Phase 1 of my revenge was complete. Victor Kavanaugh was about to face justice for his crimes. Now came the hard part, figuring out what to do about Mara. The arrest made the evening news. I watched from my living room as Victor Kavanaugh was led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled and his usual arrogance replaced by shell-shocked disbelief. The reporter mentioned charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to flee prosecution. No bail had been set. My phone rang as the segment ended. It was Carla. "Mara's here," she said without preamble. "At my apartment. She's a mess, David. I've never seen her like this." "How bad?" "She hasn't stopped crying in 3 hours. She keeps saying she's ruined everything, that she threw away 12 years for a fantasy." "What does she want?" "To talk to you, to explain, to apologize, I think. Though she hasn't said that directly." I was quiet for a moment, weighing my options. "Bring her here. Tonight." "But Carla?" "Yeah?" "Stay with her. I want a witness to whatever conversation we have." An hour later, they arrived at my front door. Mara looked terrible, her hair unwashed, her eyes red and swollen, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. She looked younger somehow, more like the woman I'd married 12 years ago. "David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mara." I stepped aside to let them in. "Living room." We sat in the same room where we'd had our confrontation a week ago, but the dynamic was completely different now. Then she'd been angry and defensive. Now she looked broken. "I don't know where to start," she said finally. "Start with the truth. When did the affair begin?" 8 months ago. Victor started paying attention to me at work, complimenting my ideas, asking for my input on strategy. I was flattered. When did it become physical? 6 months ago, after the company retreat in Napa. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. I told myself it wasn't really cheating because we were just talking, just connecting intellectually, but that was a lie. What changed? Why did you decide to leave me for him? He made me feel important, special, like I was worth more than— She gestured around the room. More than this suburban life. More than me, you mean? Yes. The word came out as a whisper. I'm so sorry, David. I know how that sounds. But Victor made me believe I deserved more than what we had. What did you think we had, Mara? What was so terrible about our marriage that you needed to replace it? Nothing was terrible. That was the problem. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. We were comfortable, predictable, safe, and I started to feel like I was sleepwalking through my life. So you decided to blow it up instead of talking to me about it. I tried to talk to you. Remember last year when I suggested we take that trip to Europe? Or when I wanted to buy the condo downtown? You always had reasons why we shouldn't change anything. I thought back to those conversations. She was right. I had been resistant to change, content with our routine. So you found someone who wasn't resistant to change. Victor promised me excitement, adventure, a life that mattered. And instead you got embezzlement charges and a man who was planning to abandon you. She flinched. I know. I was so stupid, David. So blind. What about the money you stole from the company? I didn't think of it as stealing. Victor said it was just creative accounting, that everyone did it. He made it seem normal. Did you know about Amanda? No, not until today. Fresh tears started flowing. He was sleeping with her the whole time he was telling me I was the only woman he'd ever really loved. What do you want from me, Mara? She struggled with the words. I want to know if there's any chance you could forgive me. If we could try to rebuild what I destroyed? I looked at this woman I'd loved for 12 years, this stranger who'd humiliated me in front of hundreds of people, this victim who'd been manipulated by a master manipulator. I felt anger and pity and love and disgust all swirling together in my chest. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can forget what you did. I don't know if what we had is worth rebuilding or if it was just comfortable mediocrity that needed to end. But you're willing to try? I'm willing to consider it, under certain conditions. What conditions? First, complete honesty. No more lies, no more secrets, no more creative interpretations of the truth. If I ask you a question, you tell me the real answer, even if it hurts. She nodded. Okay. Second, counseling. Individual therapy for both of us, couples therapy for us together. We need professional help to figure out what went wrong and whether it can be fixed. I can do that. Third, you cooperate fully with the federal investigation into Victor and the company. You tell them everything you know, you testify if necessary, and you accept whatever legal consequences come from your actions. Her face went pale. Could I go to prison? Possibly. Probably not if you cooperate, but it's a risk you'll have to accept. And fourth? Fourth, we start over completely. New house, new city if necessary, new life. I won't live in the shadow of what happened. If we're going to try again, it has to be somewhere fresh. You'd be willing to leave Chicago? For the right reasons, yes. She was quiet for a long time, thinking. Finally, she looked up at me. What if I do all of that and we still can't make it work? Then at least we'll know we tried, and we'll be able to end things with dignity instead of betrayal. David? Carla spoke up from her corner of the room. Can I say something? Go ahead. Mara's been my best friend for 15 years. I've watched her make a lot of mistakes, but I've never seen her as sorry for anything as she is for this. She knows she screwed up. She knows she hurt you. And she knows she might have destroyed the best thing in her life. What's your point? My point is that people make mistakes, sometimes huge, life-altering, unforgivable mistakes. But sometimes they learn from them. Sometimes they become better people because of them. I looked at Mara, who was watching me with desperate hope in her eyes. I need time to think, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make tonight. How much time? A week, maybe 2. I need to process everything that's happened, figure out what I really want. And in the meantime, you figure out your legal situation. You find a place to stay. Not here, not yet. And you think about whether you're really ready to do the work it would take to rebuild our marriage. She nodded and stood up. David? Yeah? Thank you for not slamming the door in my face, for giving me a chance to explain, for destroying Victor before he could destroy me completely. You're welcome. After they left, I sat in my living room with a glass of scotch, thinking about choices and consequences, about love and betrayal, about whether some things could be forgiven and others could be forgotten. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness, full of people making decisions that would change their lives forever. Tomorrow, I would make mine. But tonight, I just sat and remembered what it felt like to be married to Mara before everything went wrong, and tried to decide if that feeling was worth fighting for. The phone rang. It was Jake. David, you need to turn on the news. Channel 7. I grabbed the remote and flipped to the local news station. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Fashion executive Victor Kavanaugh found dead in federal holding cell. The reporter's voice filled my living room. Victor Kavanaugh, the Chicago fashion executive arrested yesterday on federal fraud charges, was found dead in his cell this evening. Preliminary reports indicate that no foul play is suspected, though the investigation is ongoing. Kavanaugh was facing up to 20 years in prison for embezzlement and conspiracy charges. I turned off the television and sat in the sudden silence. Victor Kavanaugh was dead. The man who had stolen my wife, humiliated me publicly, and planned to destroy her life had taken the coward's way out rather than face the consequences of his actions. I felt empty, not satisfied, not vindicated, just empty. I picked up my phone and called Carla. Is Mara with you? I asked when she answered. Yes, we just saw the news. She's not handling it well. Bring her back here, tonight. She shouldn't be alone right now. Are you sure? I'm sure. Whatever else Victor was, he was a human being, and Mara cared about him even if he didn't deserve it. We'll be right over. I hung up and poured another scotch. Then I poured a second one for Mara. Whatever happened between us, whatever we decided about our marriage, tonight we would grieve together for the man who had nearly destroyed us both. Tomorrow we would start figuring out how to rebuild our lives from the wreckage he'd left behind.